We were just running some 400s, quarter miles. I was doing the timing. We actually were on our last, we had run 3 previous quarter miles, everything was good, and we were on our last 400. Caleb and another young man across the finish line, okay, with their timing. I was still timing the other athletes as they crossed. I didn't see it, but the other athlete he crossed with had actually given him a high five. They were talking, and Caleb actually told him, "I feel tight. I'm going to stretch a little bit." You know, and I don't know if that was the onset, but he had actually kind of knelt down to do some stretching. And then by the time I had finished the timing of the others, I turned around and he was on the ground lying. And sometimes Caleb can be a little, you know, he can play around a little bit. And I started calling his name. I told him to get up, and he didn't move. And that's when I went over and kind of saw that he had very shallow breathing. You know, he actually had it was basically some spit coming from his mouth. So I had knelt down next to him, was calling his name, and that's when I realized his breaths were really shallow. And that's when I started checking for a pulse, you know, checking him, calling his name, and then that's actually when the head coach, Coach Kniep, had come over, and you know, we were checking for a pulse. And Coach Kniep, we were having trouble finding a pulse. Every once in a while you get a beat. And then Coach Kniep looked at me and said, "Should I call?" I said, and that's when I started saying, "Call the ambulance, someone get the trainers, you know, get him out here." And that's when I kind of folded him back over onto his back and still checking for breaths, checking for the pulse, which we were having trouble finding, and that's when I started administering CPR.
Was he conscious at all?
No, he was unresponsive.
And the breathing was every once in a while?
Yep, very shallow, kind of that sucking, trying to suck in air every once in a while, and eventually that kind of subsided as well.
And the breathing was just slowing down?
Yes.
As far as you could tell?
Yes.
And what was your mindset at that time? I mean, I think you talked about it being surreal. Is there any sense of panic? Is it, I just got to do what I got to do here? What is going on in your head?
At first, yes. Once Coach Kniep said, "Should we call the ambulance?" And that was kind of the instinctive, we got to get going with this, kind of the call the ambulance, get the trainers. Luckily, our AD happened to be down on the field as well. He sprinted over and got the athletic trainers, and they were, as soon as they said we got a student athlete down, they immediately, it wasn't even hesitation for them to grab the AED unit on their way out, you know, and I had started compressions, but within, you know, you're talking less, you know, like a minute and a half, the athletic trainers were there assisting, you know, with the compressions, and then also with the mouth-to-mouth as well, and then the other. I started the compressions, you know, just make sure you get the compressions, and then the athletic trainer had got the face mask going with the breaths.
So you did those two things, and then the AED came?
Then she had brought the AED, we had started the CPR, the other athletic trainer came out as well, so we actually had 2 athletic trainers out here. While we were administering the CPR, he was getting the AED unit unhooked.
Was he responding?
No.
At one point on the 911 call, it sounds like there's a breath, and I hear one of you say, come on, Caleb. Did you see any kind of response there, or was that just the natural, you're trying to get him to come?
Just trying to get him to come around.
You never did see it?
No. Nope.
So when he's taken away, you don't know? Correct. And what is your thought?
It's that surreal moment that what just happened. You're kind of looking around and, you know, in a daze, you know, because you got the high school athletes out here, the middle school athletes were out here. There was quite a few athletes kind of off to the side, and you're just looking around, not knowing what to do, you know, how to react, you know, just hoping for the best. So.
Not sure what's going to happen.
Exactly.
And then what happens next? He goes away, and you're just waiting, right?
Yes, correct.
After you found out that he was okay and that he lived through this, and what's your thought now?
Just glad, you know, it's one of those things, you go through the training, you know, and you're thinking, hopefully this is never me, you know, type thing, but having the training, at least having the idea of what to do, you know, going through those classes, it gives you the perspective of, okay, this is the moment, you know, that once you administer the stuff and you know, the athlete lives, it's, boy, that was all well worth it type, you know, and because sometimes it's, you know, it can be time consuming to do all that, but it's well worth it.
Can you talk about how it's impacted your life? I would imagine it would be a very emotional thing
Uh,
for you.
yeah, I have two kids of my own, and it's one of those where you go home and you give your kids a hug, and you just glad. There's always, hate to say, there's always, although sometimes it looks uh, could look gloomy. You always things aren't so bad. There's could always be something worse, and then this situation turned out for the best.
What difference
Type
do you think
thing.
the AED? Obviously, your compressions are probably the first thing that kept him going, and then the CPR, the mouth to mouth, and then the AED. What do you credit for saving him? All a combination of all of those.
Combination, but I would the AED I would definitely say would be the biggest thing. To get that shock administered to at least jumpstart the heart. The compressions, the combination of both, but then the AED. I don't know if the AED wasn't there and even the ambulance arriving as quick as it did. If the AED, if you don't have the AED units, compressions, I'm not sure. How the survival rate works without those without the AED unit.
Here's the question that everyone hates to answer: the hero label. That people will say, "Boy, that was all of you guys were heroes that day," and I'm sure the family feels that way. Do you do you get to step back and say, "Wow, that was pretty heroic that we all jumped in and did what we did"?
You get that feeling of I did something good. It's as we keep stating, it's more about the student athlete and him surviving. You just the team effort. Everyone combined. And doing the right thing and the training that was given. At that time. You get that feel good moment of I'm so glad that things turned out for the best.